Welcome to lesson number 4 of our preparation for our Israel tour. In this lesson, we will go over our Hebrew lesson number 4. We will also survey the major routes of the geography of the land of Israel. Then, we will begin a study of the survey of the Old and New Testament. In this lesson, we will do our first part of our survey of Old Testament history. Then, we will begin a look at the early Judean ministry of Jesus' life and ministry. Our major goal for all of this is that we would prepare for lifetime impact with this trip. Let's turn now to Hebrew lesson number 4. It's always helpful to review, so let's look at what we've learned so far. We've studied how to introduce ourselves, how to ask a name of the person you are meeting, and to state that it is nice to meet them. Here are some words that you've learned so far. Shalom, a general greeting, meaning hello, also goodbye. It's the word for peace. Yom Tov means good day. Boker Tov means good morning. Erev Tov means good evening. Laila Tov means good night. You might say, Ani me California, I am from California. And you might ask, Me'efo ata, or Me'efo at, where are you from? Ani, Joshua, in my case, I am Joshua. Shmi, my name is Joshua. But let's begin to ask the question, where is the bathroom? And here's the question. Efo sherotim. Efo sherotim. Where's the bathroom? Usually, when you are going to ask this question, you will get the person's attention by saying, pardon me, or excuse me. So let's learn that too. Slicha, slicha, so putting it together. Slicha, efo sherotim. Slicha, efo sherotim. Slicha, efo sherotim. Excuse me, where is the bathroom? Well, if you ask a question of where, you should be prepared to know some vocabulary that has to do with directions. Let's survey 5 of these words. First, sham, there. Po, here. Yamina, to the right. Shmola, to the left. And yeshar, straight ahead. Slicha, efo sherotim? Ah, sham. Excuse me, where's the bathroom? Oh, it's over there. Turning now, let's begin our overview of the major routes of the geography of the land of the Bible. And for this, I'm going to direct you to the videos produced by Bill Schlegel, accessible through the website BiblePlaces.com. So if you want to pause the video at this point and go to those links at BiblePlaces.com, you will find the videos for the major routes of the land of Israel. Now we'll turn to a survey of Old Testament history, and this will be part 1. There are some challenges to studying Old Testament dates and dating. It's important for us to know a big picture view of history, because then we can place what we learn and what is talked about by our guides during the tour into a context of what we already know about the Old Testament. First, we need to ask the question how we come up with these dates. In the Old Testament dates, we're dealing with BC dates, or before Christ dates. And these dates are counting what we would think of as backwards. They're counting down, not up. So we could ask the question, how does this system work? When did it start? When did they start counting? How do we derive at these dates? Well, our prime starting point is looking at the Assyrian kings list. The Assyrians kept detailed records of every year. Usually they named the year. They named it after the king's first year, the king's second year. Sometimes they named the year after a major general who had a key victory. In some of these cases, they would add some extra detail about something significant that happened in that year. In one of these years, the year of Bursagali, it notes that there was a total eclipse of the sun over Nineveh. Because eclipses of the sun are astronomical phenomena which have a mathematical timetable, we're able to pinpoint that this eclipse happened on June 15th, 762 BC. With this exact date, we're able to match the date up to the king's list. As we look down the king's list, we find, or up the king's list, we find the name of the king Shalmaneser III. Well, in Shalmaneser III's annals, he mentions that he fought in the Battle of Karkar against a coalition of kings, one of which was Ahab. As we look at this detail, we are able to find that this was Ahab's last year, or 853 BC. Another resource, the Black Obelisk, depicts Jehu, and we're able to see that this was Jehu's first year, or 841 BC. Knowing Ahab's last year and Jehu's first year allows us to date all of the Old Testament. Applying those dates, and working backwards of what we find in the Old Testament record, we're able to find some key dates, like Solomon starting to build the temple in 966 BC, the division of the monarchy in 931 BC. We're even able to trace Abraham's birth in 2166, which we read about in Genesis 21:5. Now, Abraham was called by God as a worshiper of the moon god in Ur of the Chaldees. God's call to him was to come out of his country to a land that he would show him. He and his family traveled north, stopping at Haran, where his father Terah died. Then they continue south into the land of Israel to Shechem, or Shem. This is where Abraham first is mentioned in the Promised Land in Genesis 12:6. I also see a brief point of stay in Egypt in Genesis 12:10 to 20 because of famine. Abraham is mentioned at Bethel when he separates himself from Lot because of their many livestock. Lot preferred to be in the Jordan Rift Valley because of how lush it was. Abraham is given a promise of and a covenant with God, according to Genesis 12:1 to 3 and 15:4 to 7 at Bethel. Fast forward to Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, who sojourned in Canaan before Jacob and the rest of the family came down to Egypt. Joseph, revealing himself to his brothers, was followed by the whole family coming down to Egypt to avoid the famine. Then they were subsequently enslaved, and they were there for a period of 430 years. Israel left Egypt in 1446, the event which we call the Exodus. Because of their disobedience, lack of faith in what God had promised, they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. During the period of the Judges, Joshua and Judges, Ruth, and 1 Samuel 1-8, Israel seeking to take possession of the promised land, but becoming entangled with the lifestyles and customs of the inhabitants of the land. Samuel, who is the last of the judges, is just a boy when the victories and tragedy of Samson are taking place. After Saul, who was the first king of Israel, fails to follow the Lord as king, Samuel anoints David as the future king of Israel. We learn about this in 1 Samuel 16. David's son, Solomon, despite being blessed by God with great wisdom and achieving the construction of a glorious temple, failed to impart a wise example of fearing God and keeping his commands to his son, Rehoboam, who quickly lost the loyalty of the people and his kingdom. That takes us to the period of the divided monarchy, which we'll cover in the next lesson. Let's look now at Jesus' early Judean ministry. In John chapter 2, we learn that the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And in the temple he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and money changers were sitting there. And making a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. During this time of early Judean ministry, Jesus was approached by a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus. And Nicodemus would come to him nightly to discuss what he was seeing of Jesus, the authority in which he taught, and asking him questions. And we remember some of the great passages of Jesus' conversation with Nicodemus, telling him that that God so loved the world, he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him would not perish, but have eternal life, and that all men must be born from above, or born again. When Jesus, one, that the Pharisees had heard that his disciples were baptizing more than John's disciples, and that John the Baptist had been arrested, he departed for Galilee, and he passed through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field of Jacob. This is where he met the woman at the well, and testified of her everything that she had ever done. And she gave wonderful testimony to her village. Finally, our Hebrew Lesson 4 review. We learned, pardon me, where's the bathroom? We learned to say, there, here, to the right, to the left, and straight ahead. Hope that these small lessons in Hebrew will be helpful to you. This takes us to day 65, away from our trip, and our trip is quickly approaching.